Hello and welcome to the Cardiac Cats YouTube channel. I'm your host, Jacob Shorba, and today we'll be doing our mock draft 6.0 for the Jacksonville Jaguars. We just wrapped up the NFL Combine this last weekend, so we're going to see if we get some new names that make it on our list today. So, before we get into this fully, we're just going to talk about some of the parameters for this, things we consider, might explain some of the decisions as well. Our goal in the draft, just as it will be for the team, is to acquire the best players. And you can factor that into your need a little bit. Sometimes there's a player that makes more sense to get than another prospect. But what we want to avoid is reaching far down the board to select certain positions that we feel like we have to address. So we're not going to pigeonhole the team into saying, oh, we have to draft, say, an offensive tackle in the first round or a cornerback. We can really go whichever route provides the best player that we could envision having a role on Jacksonville's team, at least at some point early in their career. Because ultimately, that's the best pick. Whether it's the best pick for this next season or for the entire career, you're really looking after that latter part. You want the best player for their entire career. So there's that. Ideal areas that we would like to add talent are going to be along the offensive line. It's going to ideally be someone who can play that left guard spot their first year, also function as a swing tackle. You're also going to look after maybe a cornerback, someone who's versatile, can play inside and outside. Because I think if you're looking to draft someone, you want to find a player who can fill the immediate need, but offers the long-term value of being a really good boundary player. So that would be something really nice to add to the team, because right now we've just got two boundary corners. We don't have guys who are going to be great inside. So it's just something to throw out there. And then the final one, I think it would be really good if Jacksonville is able to get a hold of one of these young, talented edge rushers, or just really any sort of pass rusher, whether a guy who plays more on the defensive line or someone who lines up in a two-point stance at outside linebacker. Getting your hands on one of those players would be really good for this franchise. So, all things we're going to look at. With that said, we're going to hop right into this. These rankings are based off of how Walk the Mock rates these players. They're not my own, so we'll have to kind of skim through this because mine are going to be a little different. So, as we usually do, these first picks, we're just kind of going to go one at a time, really try to evaluate if any prospects are falling. We might trade up if there's a good scenario for it. But ideally, you don't want to give up a ton of draft capital. So, nothing crazy at this point in the draft. We see a lot of the offensive tackles are off the board. Broderick Jones still sitting there. He'd be someone I would definitely consider. But yeah, he's going to go to Pittsburgh. There's a good chance of that. At this point, I think in real life, they could consider trading up for Osiris Torrance, but I would probably sit put. So we'll kind of see how things look. Just cross our fingers. So here we are at pick 24. Might be going a similar route. A lot of similar names to what we've drafted before on the board, but we'll still go over players here. Bijan Robinson, as far as like talented player, if he's available at 24, he's probably top of your list, but the problem is that you're not drafting a running back here. You have Travis Etienne. You're not really looking to add at that position. It's not going to offer as much as you need it to. And so just not really a smart pick, because then you're taking a former first rounder and you're really limiting what he can bring to the team because he can't even be on the field all the time. So Robinson's not going to be considered for those obvious reasons. Michael Mayer would be a really nice addition at tight end. Tight end that's going to be a bit different than the way Evan Ingram functions. So you could definitely consider him, but I'm not going to pick up a tight end this early in the draft. I Also, don't think Mayer in this draft, and I don't think it's by much, but I don't have him as my top tight end. I have Dalton Kincaid. I think just the way he plays reminds me a ton of Zach Ertz, and he just looks like he's going to be a monster in the NFL. So both of them are really high for me. They're very close, but I still wouldn't take Kincaid either because I think that as much as I love the player and think you could value him at this kind of selection, for him to really be on the field a ton would probably require one of your top wide receivers to go off the field or the team to move on from Evan Ingram. So I wouldn't consider Mayer too much. Kelee Ringo, to me, I just don't even have him in the first round anymore. I could get why Jacksonville would go after him, but I'm just not a huge fan after really looking into things. And I think he's better to pick up in like the early second round and just try to get him at a really good value and hope he turns out good. Like if I'm, say, Arizona, like I'm probably trying to get Kelee Ringo in the early second round. That would be a way I would go. Remaining players, Cam Smith, he would really fit the bill for your cornerback, for your versatile guy. You like that. Osiris Torrance, personally, he's my favorite here. Really good offensive lineman. He's an awesome guard. Definitely battle tested. He went from the Raging Cajuns to the Florida Gators and put up a season that I believe it was actually better than what he did in Louisiana, despite the huge increase in competition. Went up against players like Jalen Carter, held his own. That is the kind of player that you want to throw on this offensive line to really finish things off. I think one last guy, actually I'll throw out two more for here because I really just want to use this to talk about prospects. Nolan Smith would not be a bad selection at this point in the draft. This team needs a speed rusher. That would be a really good addition to make, and Nolan Smith would be worth this selection. However, I still value Torrance over him, but I mean, he's a fast player. You got to think about this. Jamal Agnew ran a 4.34 at the NFL Combine. Smith was half a tenth off of that. And we all know Jamal Agnew is pretty damn fast. So you're getting a fast player. You're getting a guy with a ton of potential. That would be a really smart pick. And if I was just going to go a different direction for the sake of going a different direction, this would be the selection. However, I'm not going to do that today. We'll probably do it in the future. But he would probably be my second choice there. And then you've got Deonte Banks. Deonte Banks, definitely someone who's flying up boards right now. First round prospect to some people. I think he's there too. I'd also consider that with Tyreek Stevenson. I think they're just really talented prospects. For me, I'm a big Stevenson fan because not only the way he plays, but I love his mentality. I think he would be a fantastic fit with Jacksonville. The way he plays the game, what you're looking for in the slot, and who he is as a player and a person is everything this team could ask for. And he's going to be versatile. So he is a really good option for this team. But we're going to go Torrance. So what we do picking Osiris Torrance here, we're getting our left guard for this team right off the bat. You're filling your last big hole on the offensive line, which is a big deal. It's a big deal to this team. You have a really good starting group of players. If you keep Jawan Taylor as well, you're looking at having all these really good starters and Walker Little as your swing tackle backing up. I mean, obviously, like, yeah, it'd be nice if Walker Little could start, but as far as just talent, like not thinking about the salary cap, that's a great situation for an offensive line. I mean, unless you've got everyone getting injured, but you're still protecting yourself. So Torrance offers a lot there. He's a really good run mauler, very talented player in that regard. I think especially too, like you consider how people are afraid of like drafting the Florida prospects to Jacksonville just because of how that's went before. Well, hey, Jawan Taylor worked out pretty well. Like we're feeling good, I think, and I don't think you got to worry as much about the school. You should never really select players just because of one school. You can consider the talent level that takes to play at certain schools. You can consider the teams they have to go up against, but it shouldn't really impact a whole ton about like where you're selecting players outside of those regards. So Torrance is just going to offer you a lot. He's going to offer you that answer in the middle. He's going to get you stronger. He's going to help out Travis Etienne. He's going to improve your pass blocking. He's really just going to be that big, awesome player in the hole on the offensive line. And then you put Ben Barch as your backup. I think that's a good role to have him in for this team. You know, obviously, some people are going to feel like he should be starting. Maybe Jacksonville feels that way. I'm sure they feel like he could, but I think it's better to have him as your backup. You know, so that's how I feel about it. I like Torrance here. He's, to me, the ideal first overall pick for this team in the draft, as long as you don't have someone crazy falling to the team. So that's our selection. Now we're going to go one pick at a time here, and we're just going to evaluate what's still on the board. So we're out of the first round. Really good players we got sitting here. Nolan Smith, Deontay Banks, Kalijah Cansey you can throw in there. He had a really good combine. Only issue with him is the arm length. He's like 30 inches or something. You want to be around 33. So you don't love that, but I still think he's going to be really good in the NFL. I still believe that. I think players you consider trading up for here. You can throw Dalton Kincaid on that list if you want. I'm not going to, as much as I like him, because I think he just offers so much what Ingram does. I think he was more so just the perfect replacement. But I would say Nolan Smith. I think you could look at really any of these cornerbacks. Deontay Banks, Clark Phillips is still on the board. I mean, that's a really good corner. I know he's really low on here. Tyreek Stevenson. He would be a player I would trade up for in real life if you had to. That's how I feel about him. DeJuan Jones probably off your board here now. But Darnell Washington, another really good player. If you just want to like home run your offensive line, your blocking, that would be quite the combo to do it. But I think, oh man, there goes Stevenson. I think we're going to go a few picks here, see how it plays out. I think we're going to maybe try to trade up here. We haven't done a lot of trades. I think it's something that Jacksonville needs to consider. Now, I understand this is probably quite a bit of capital you're giving up because you're moving up quite a bit. I think you're giving up your third round pick doing this kind of move. The only issue I have with that is you're not really putting yourself in a spot to get one of these young corners. That's a big issue. I think for that reason, yeah, we're gonna stay put. We're gonna wait a little longer. Maybe we still can trade up. I just don't want to give up that kind of capital. So we see Nolan Smith's off the board. There goes DeJuan Jones. We've still got Cansey sitting here. Darnell Washington. You've got the corners. If you're moving up to Green Bay's pick, and we're going back to our draft capital here, you're probably packaging your fourth rounders according to that. I think at this point, you want to get in on this corner class. Like, you do want to do that. I'm not trying to pigeonhole us, but there's a lot of really good corners, and there's some really good pass rushers as well. So I think with that all considered, we could look at trading up here. Cansey is definitely someone I would consider doing it for. I think even Darnell Washington would be pretty nice. I'm not sure which I would go with. I think Cansey probably offers a little more, but I think Darnell Washington's also just such a unique athlete, and there's a lot that Jacksonville could do with him. So we're going to keep moving and maybe look to trade up a little less once one of them's off the board. Yeah, so we're at Pittsburgh's selection. It wouldn't be nearly as much capital that we're giving up here to make this move. And man, I really like Clark Phillips. I do. He's pretty high on my board. I think we're going to make this trade. So we'll look. We'll give up this one. We'll also throw in a 6th rounder. Value's a little off, and it often is, but I think this is a trade that would still be accepted in person. I think you could get pretty close to that value. It's not far off. So we're really looking between Darnell Washington and Clark Phillips at this point. I think with we'll look close into both these players. I have Clark Phillips listed higher on my draft board right now. He's still around 20 for me. And he might move a little bit based off of the combine. I haven't fully updated all this. And at the same time, you know, with Darnell Washington, he's 45 for me. He's going to be moving up my board. So these guys are going to be a lot closer. I still think Phillips will have the advantage. But the tight end class, as talented as it is not super deep. And so it would be nice if Jacksonville was able to get in on a guy like Darnell Washington in this class. That would be a really good situation for them. Now, later tight ends they could look at. You could always just go after a guy like, say, Sam Laporta. Sam Laporta is just going to be a really solid all-around tight end. Could be an easy one to go to. The problem for me, it's hard to decide, honestly, because both of these players are extremely special. I think for complete opposite reasons. Darnell Washington's got like the ridiculous size. Phillips doesn't. Washington's all this like potential you see. You see his crazy like catching ability, but he's very limited on what he's produced in college. You saw it at the combine with this one-handed catch he did on the corner. It wasn't the corner, but the sideline. I mean, it was impressive the way he plays. He looks like a monster at that position, and he would be a huge deal. I think if you brought him in, and you threw him in at tight end here, you have an absolutely ridiculous blocking scheme now. And you're not worried about much of anything. But with Clark Phillips, you're getting yourself a really, really nice cornerback. Someone who's going to be undersized, but man, you watch the way he plays, he is a ferocious player. He is really talented. And so, as much as I like Clark Phillips, I think here, we're going to go all out on the offense. We're going to get the really special prospect. And like I said, they both are. But I think with Darnell Washington, you're getting a player who sets your blocking scheme at this point completely over the top. I mean, you're not worried about that anymore. And on the offensive side of things, really all you can ask for at this point, contested catch receiver, and ideally another running back. But I mean, with Hasty back, like, you're not too worried about it. So we've made our trade up. We gave up capital. I think we're going to just go ahead and skip ahead. You see Clark Phillips goes off the board there. And we'll have to see who's all available. So, I know we've gone all offense here. Yeah, we're scrolling really far. It's kind of the issue we run into at this point in the draft. Cornerback starts to get a little different. It's not as open as it was before. Now, I really like Travius Hodges-Tomlinson. He's another player I'm really big on. I think he's your... I don't know if everyone will love this way to describe him, but he's probably the poor man's Clark Phillips. The weird thing to just compare him to another college player, but Travius Hodges-Tomlinson is, like Clark Phillips, a really talented player that it's just got size concerns. And I think if we actually, and once again, I haven't fully updated all these from the combine. If I find him on here, actually, I think he's a lot higher for me. Yeah, he came in a little shorter, but you see the speed's a lot better. His size is around the same. You want to see him add some strength, but I think if he adds some strength, you get a player who's a really good fit for the slot. And so what we will probably do is look to target that with our 4th round selection, most likely. Now here, Zach Harrison would be a really good value at this selection. And talk about him for a moment. Find him on my board. I've got him, I think. Probably just missed him. Yeah, here he is. Yeah, he's a late 2nd rounder for me. He's one of these guys on the defensive line. Has the size, has all the tools, but you just didn't see him like break out in college. And there's a few names like that. You got Isaiah Foskey, for example. If you want to talk about another one. Harrison would be a really nice player to get in on this draft. However, another player I've got higher, one I'm going to draft a lot because I just think that he is a really smart player for Jacksonville to target and a really good story, is Xavier Hutchinson. And I'm not sure he'll be available here, but I think with Hutchinson, you're getting this contested catch guy who's going to fill in for Marvin Jones really well. He's also a big slot, so you could see him play that role kind of like Keenan Allen. You're having a player who's versatile. And the two things that the Jaguars talked about at the combine were the size and the versatility. And we're getting that with all these players so far. And you're going to get that once again with Xavier Hutchinson. So with Torrance, you've got a prototypical guard as far as the size. Talented player. And he can also move out to tackle if you absolutely need it. That is possible. You get your size and versatility. Darnell Washington, you got your size. I mean, you can't complain about that. You got a monster at tight end. Gonna get someone who comes in as a blocker. I'm not sure he's like a super versatile player, but he offers a lot more than what the average tight end does in the sense that he is essentially a 6th offensive lineman on the field. So with Washington, I think you could say both of those. And with Hutchinson, in a wide receiver class full of all of these slot players or these guys who are undersized that may not win on the outside in the NFL, he's one of these rare, taller guys, bigger builds, and he's someone who can get a lot of yards after catch. Very good at that. And we said it 1,000 times on here. I'll go through the spiel again, though. He's from Jacksonville. He's a guy who's local. He played for Iowa State, obviously, but getting him back to Jacksonville is a really good story in that regard. He's a good person, from everything you see at least, right? I mean, we obviously don't know everything in his personal life, and neither should we, but everything you see about him, he interviews well. He seems like a good person to have in your locker room, good mentality to have. So you're adding that to the team. And only thing here, really, this is all offense. We're hitting the offense like crazy. So that is obviously a concern. But, man, at the same time, you hit every need on offense exactly how you needed to. And you got players, I would argue, that were more valuable than the selection you took them at. I don't think Torrance is the 24th best player. I think he's better. Washington, it's the same thing there. I think he's better than this selection. And Hutchinson, I think, should be going in the late 2nd round. That's just how I feel about him. Not that everyone else will, but that's where I'm at. Now, we're going to kind of watch this corner group because we don't want to miss out on getting our guy. So we will consider trading up if needed, which looks like it's going to be close. So I think, man, who do we got on the board? Let's look at that first. From this, there's no one I would kill to have. I think we just got to play it safe here and make sure we land our guy. You could get him at 419, but I think with this scenario, you're really close to completing a really good draft. And so moving up to that selection that the Jets own, see the value is really about 18. You could trade your early 6th rounder, and that would pretty much match it. So I think that's what we're going to look to do. Not going to have a ton of selections, but that's fine, honestly. See, the value's pretty much equal. So you're giving up your early 6th round selection, which really those picks are going to be to move around in the draft. That's the main thing we're going to look at for them, because it's very unlikely you're getting a player at that point that's going to make a huge impact. For example, are Monteric Brown or Gregory Jr. huge impacts on the Jaguars? No, they aren't. They played a little bit, but they're not super important players. Hopefully they just become superstars, but that's the truth right now. So we're fine moving on from late selections, and we are down to 6 overall. It's not ideal, but hey, we're going to get our guy. We're going to get our cornerback finally, get our slot guy. Going to get a really good player for that. Someone who's really underrated. And at this point, we've really hit a lot of needs. We killed it, I think, on the offensive side of the ball. We hit the big need on the defense. And I think if you had this, you're feeling pretty solid. Now, this next selection, eventually they'll update it on here, but this is not currently owned by the Jaguars because with Calvin Ridley being reinstated, this pick belongs to the Falcons as part of the trade package, and we would be receiving our 6th round selection back. So they essentially upgrade from our 6th rounder to our 5th rounder. So that was Atlanta's pick. We'll move forward to our next selection. We'll just kind of see what the best players are on the board. We're not going to worry too much about these selections either. I think, unfortunately he's not here. Let's think about Moro Ajamo. He should go a lot earlier. Go look at the running back room. Not a whole lot of guys I know. In all honesty, at this point, probably avoid that. Could get a defensive player with Kobe Turner. It's not really anyone else who stands out much, and I don't want to spend too much time on these last picks. Now, Zach Kuntz, I think he's going to go a heck of a lot earlier than this. If we hadn't selected a tight end, then yeah, maybe we'd go after Zach Kuntz, and maybe we could regardless, but I'm not going to make the pick just because I don't think he'll ever be available there, and because we already hit tight end. We'll just go Kobe Turner, get some defensive line depth there, and then we'll make our final selection here. So we have got Zach Kuntz again. Could look to, really at this point with what's on the board, I don't think we need a player like Trevor Reed or Antonio Mafi. With getting Osiris Torrance, and won't really offer a ton. I think what we'll do is we'll go after O'Shawn Mathis, get an edge guy, someone who's got decent size, you could develop. You're fine getting those kinds of guys, because if you can turn them into anything, that's a win. And that's really what you're trying to do at this point of the draft. You're looking for traits. You're looking for people who could be diamonds in the rough. So that's the selection we'll make there. We'll go ahead and skip to the end of this draft and just review it for you guys. So here we go. Now overall, a lot of trades. Two specifically. This last one really doesn't count because that's already official. We gave up some capital to move around. We gave up ultimately a 4th and 2 6th rounders to move up in this draft, and those were used to move up for Darnell Washington and Travius Hodges-Tomlinson. And I think those are good moves. I think you're moving up for really smart players at those points. With Osiris Torrance with your first selection, I think that's the slam dunk pick for the Jaguars in the first round. And like I've said before, I changed my mind on this stuff. I really do. But with Torrance, I think he's probably going to stick around as one of my top guys. Just makes too much sense. He fills the hole on your offensive line. He can be that swing tackle. Even if Jawan Taylor doesn't come back, he kind of satisfies the remaining needs on the offensive line. So you really like that with him. If he's available at 24, he's a home run selection for the Jaguars. The guy you sprint to the podium to go select. And then the second round, we really just finished off the blocking with Darnell Washington, getting a freakish tight end, getting someone that, hey, let Doug Peterson have some fun with him and let Trent Baalke have his eyes pop out of his sockets because he can't believe what he's looking at on the field. Dude's 6'7", 260 something or whatever it is. Like, I think that's a player they're gonna fall in love with, whether they're in position to get him or not. I think he's a really good fit with Jacksonville because he offers what Evan Ingram can't, and he would make sense for someone if you want to run that 2 tight end package. But hey, maybe you also just use him as more of a blocker. You get him in the red zone. We didn't see Evan Ingram super involved in the red zone, at least early in the season. So maybe Darnell Washington comes in those kinds of situations, and I think that's fine for a second round pick. You're just getting a fantastic player and really good value at that point. Third round, we hit our last real need on the offense. You're getting your contested catch guy, someone I think can be a really good starter in the NFL. Not a number one receiver, but just a really solid starter that plays a really good role on your offense. Not the guy who's going to get like 1,200 yards a year, but I can see him being really productive. I think he's super valuable for that point in the draft. And you get someone who's very familiar with Jacksonville. Fits your need. You could even move him in the slot. He's versatile. You love all that about him. I think you're hitting your cornerback slot finally. We tried to say before, hey, we're not pigeonholing ourselves into these spots, but I do think you need to get in on the corner class. It's nice to get in on like edge too, but corner's the necessity. That's what you have to hit because that's the one position on this team that absolutely has to be upgraded because you got to get someone for the slot. And, last year they ran a slot corner like 75% of the time on the field. So it is going to be important. It's not a guy who's not going to be starting most of the time. He's going to be out on the field. You're getting that in the 4th round. You're getting a player who can definitely start for you. That's really good value. And I think it's worth the trade up. And for your final selections, you're just throwing pieces at your defensive line. So overall, I'd be very happy with the draft. A lot of players that I'm well versed with, a lot of players I really like. But your offense, you feel great. I mean, you really don't have any excuses. You've fixed, I think, every notable issue on that side of the ball. And on the defense, didn't really do a whole ton. You hit corner, you get a guy you can start in the slot, and you've got your one need addressed. I think this team would probably be better off anyway trying to make sure to either just retain their defensive guys like Smoot and Arden Key, but I think it would be nice to add someone in free agency. Get a veteran on a cheap deal. That's a good way to address it. Or, obviously just going after a corner and fixing that need before the draft. I think those are really good moves that the Jaguars could go after. So in this situation, I think you're still fine. You're considering going into the draft that the Jaguars probably have addressed all their needs. Getting yourself in their slot corner, you probably got depth there. You're feeling all right on that side of the ball. And really, you already have the foundation of players. These guys that should step up, should be really good in the future. You just need them to do it. So that's really a lot of your roster. You're just kind of supplementing that in this draft and trying to get your future starters and all that. So ultimately, I think it's a solid draft. I think it's one of my favorite ones. I'd be happy with it. But yeah, let me know what you think of it. Let me know what you think about the players, guys that you like. I like talking about the draft, so definitely get back to y'all on that best I can. And with that said, let me know if you got any ideas for content you want to see on here, any of that sort of stuff. Thank you for watching. Thanks for taking your time here. I hope you have a great rest of your day. And finally, go Jags.